Here are 5 motion graphics tricks to make Outsfolk anything cinematic in After Effects. As you know, we'll be using a handful of buffoonery effects to create light and shadow, which will allow us to produce an infinite amount of motion graphics. Alrights, my first and favorite motion design trick is turning random shapes into gradient masterpiece. So firstly, create any shape of your choice with the shape tools. Though you could use the rectangle tool to create a large shape in the corner, maybe rotate it, or even use the ellipse tool to create a basic circle, or stretch it all out to create an oval for some variation. Now, for some quick animation right off the bat, we can use the Wiggle Paths property inside the shape layer. This is a very simple effect, if you will, as you only need to increase the size, lower the detail, set the points to smooth, and maybe use a low wiggles per second. And this can also be copied and pasted to your other shape layers as well to create that $1 million animation. But to give this scene some life, go ahead and add the 4-color gradient effect and move the points to the edges or the sides of your graphic. And finally, you're going to want to use 2 colors, similar tonality, to create a very nice blend. Now, to help blend this into the background, let's use the Gaussian blur effect and set the amount to, around 10. And most importantly, let's use a CC radial blur effect to set this to a fading zoom. This effect is going to allow you to move the center origin of the blur with the anchor point right here, which should be placed on the side of the shape. Then all we need to do is increase the amount to make the sides scatter with a blur. Awesome. We can also all-click the stopwatch here to use the wiggle 0.5 20 expression to add a little bit more animation, and of course, you can copy and paste these effects to your other independent shape layers. But now let's go ahead and add some character with our cinematic effects by creating an adjustment layer. The first effect to add is noise, which we'll set to 12%. The second effect is glow, which all we need to do is nearly max out the glow radius and maybe adjust the threshold if needed. And finally try the posterize effect to create some grit. And if you like, use the curves effect to add some extra contrast. And most importantly, to make sure that these effects actually work, you're going to need a very dark background underneath your cinematic gradient shapes. After adding all text in frame, go to the adjustment layer and add wave warp effect. Then, in effect, change sign to smooth noise. Wave, height 20, wave, width 50. And after this, our first gradient animation is done. Now, go ahead and make those millions. The next cinematic motion graphic is creating pockets of light and shadow with a single effect. Look straight on almost anything. Add solid layer change color to light sky. When you apply it to a white, maybe bluish solid layer, the color doesn't really matter. And that effect is C Spotlight. Now, wasting no time, we should set the blend mode of the layer to either add, screen, or lighten intensity of the effect to 100. Doing this will allow us to visualize the spotlight correctly, and all we need to do is move the anchor points of the spotlight effect to help angle this in the direction that you want, and set the height of the effect 0, cone angle 9.7, and edge softness 98. Hold Alt and click on cone angle, and change expression to wiggle to 0.5. Very cute. Now, to help fade the light beam into the background, let's go ahead and use the linear wipe transition effect and set the angle to match your current beam direction. And then adjust the completion and then truly go crazy on the feather. Awesome. Let's go ahead and duplicate the spotlight layer and then set the bottom blend mode to darken. And add dark solid layer. Cool. Then we add grid effect. Change corner point to width slider. Increase width and decrease border by 0.5. Also, reduced opacity of grid. Pre-comp solid layer and draw mask like this and press M on keyboard. Increase mask feather and also increase mask expansion. Then we make new adjustment layer and add noise and other effects like first gradient animation. And you can also add some new spotlights by duplicating the top layer and moving it around. Also, you can animate the from and to values to actually move the beams of light to create something cinematic. Then add curve effect and adjustment layer and increase highlight. Then add keyframe for move of spotlight and easily produce cinematic visuals and save time with my After Effects and Premiere Pro templates, drag and drop transitions, animation presets, and powerful motion graphics that you can customize with a few clicks. Alright, this is a quick technique to add a simple refraction effect to anything is by drawing out a thin, straight line horizontally, then right-click this layer, go to Layer Styles, and add a gradient. Just select everything and hit P on your keyboard for position. But now we can take this composition, create an adjustment layer, and add the displacement map effect. We'll set the map layer to that, composition that we created, and then adjust the displacement values to create a glass-esque refraction effect. Select all text layer and move above of adjustment layer. Then make Daker solid layer and place below. Add keyframe and move horizontal and vertical. And remember, you can create this vertically as well, so it can be horizontally and vertically. With that said, my next favorite motion graphic is creating curved light streaks like this. So, we create new bulk solid layer and add gradient ramp effect. Change first color to darker blue and second black. Move the blue color in center like this. We can create a very large white stroke, only circle with the ellipse tool. Then, we add trim path. And all we need to do is adjust the end and the offset. You can even keyframe the offset to rotate the line by a bit. Now, to smooth out those hard edges, go to taper and max out the start and end length just like. Circle stroke look like small, we increase the value of stroke. Perfect. Now, for the effects, use the Gaussian blur effect and set it to 10. And then use a CC radial fast blur effect. Increase the amount and set this to brightest. Now, use the glow effect and increase the radius. And for a stacking, technique, duplicate the glow effect and increase the radius even further. Now, finally, to give this some color, go ahead and create an adjustment layer. And again, add noise effects and make it 12%. And then add posterize effect and make it 14%. Use the tritone effect and just set that midtone color to any color that you want. And then use the glow effect once again for some good looking. Then, of course, make sure that you have a background and you can animate the streak however you want. Maybe, cough cough, use the trim paths to bring in your glowing cinematic streak. Just awesome. But okay, the next and final technique is creating colorful motion graphics in moments with the techniques that we've already used in this video. Kinda tying everything together to auriform. So, for instance, you can create any shape that you like, and I'll set this to a, radial gradient for this specific shape. You'll typically want to set your points for the gradient off the bat so that we can actually see the colors as we edit the gradient with a bunch of different, tones like so. Now, if you have a stroke object, we can animate it in with trim paths, right? But back to the basics. Again, with an adjustment layer, we can use the noise and the glow effect several times to compound the overall glowability of everything. And of course, you can use posterize to add some grit to your object. Also, since the blur effect is a massive key to the cinematic theme, try the camera lens blur effect on your actual shape and then use the wiggle expression again to pop this in and out of focus. But now, you have the tools to create cinematic motion graphics. Subscribe to be the best and always be creative.